Hey gamers, welcome to another episode of RPGaymer. Today we're going to talk about the extravagant game Cuphead that our resident Mr. Soup Brian and I recently streamed. What's going on, buddy?
Hey buddy, how are you? We did so good. So good.
Yeah, we did so good.
As a team, we did so good.
As a team. And actually, as a team is kind of the focus on this tier list that we're going to do for this episode today. So we know that a lot of people like to talk when they talk about this game, bosses and difficulty and whatnot. But we thought, again, as just like our Shining Force episode, we'd put our own little spin on it. So this time we're going to talk about how successfully, how difficult it was to triumph over these bosses in co-op. Because would you feel like it was a different experience at co-op versus solo?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, the first thing, don't you take, or you both collectively have less health, right?
No, actually, you have the same health. I think
okay.
The bosses take more damage, though.
Okay, well, I thought in solo that you have 5 hits instead of 3.
No, you have to equip the badges for that. Well, and actually, this enters my next point, too.
Right.
So, Brian only played the game...
Co-op ever.
I get co-op ever, and I think, only second time, right? And you didn't beat it, is that right? Almost beat it, but you didn't beat it, and you were very drunk?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for me, I had beaten it before. I will not say by any means I'm a pro. I do have the platinum trophy in this game.
That makes you a pro.
A job. I would definitely not say I'm a pro. It was the struggle is real. But I had managed to beat it before. This was my second time beating it on PlayStation. So I think it's a good way to kind of mix things up in terms of skill level and whatnot, because typically, you're thinking co-op, people aren't going to be on the same skill level, obviously.
Right.
And there are a lot of things that are going on in some of these bosses that are going to impact even people who are experienced,
Yeah.
There were times where we had to make the agreement, hey, call out if you're going to parry something, because
True.
we both might be going for that parry, and then the other person's just going to fall and hit something, right?
Yeah, and just the amount of times that you get lost tracking your character and you start tracking the other character and you die because of that.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
happened to me quite a few times.
I think when I started to play as Miss Chalice in our final round, because I went ahead and did the DLC right before our last stream, because we were really struggling with Mr. Dice or whatever his name is. It helped. I think it helped differentiate us because she looks different enough.
Exactly.
With being more yellow and whatnot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through all the bosses in a reasonable order. So we'll do them by aisle that they appear. We're gonna talk about what was hard with them, what was easy with them. We're gonna talk about what strategies, what weapons we use. Talk about some things that popped up in our stream. I'll probably have some of our actual streams playing in the bottom.
Nice.
Potentially our victory runs, depending on if I can make it all fit.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of tackle it from there. So it's interesting as we do this too. I think you think that starting at the very beginning of the game things are going to be the easiest, but I don't always think that's the case. Which we'll see as we progress. But let's start with our first victim of the brothers Cup and Mug, and that was Goopy Grande, our little slime ball here. Why don't you go ahead and start us out with how this was, especially because this was the first boss we tackled in this game.
For me, this was definitely just a warm-up, but it was still really difficult because you immediately have to learn patterns, which that's not the hardest part. It is getting used to the controls, because it's kind of a what do you call it? The claw to dash. You have to use the claw hand, and I would either miss the dash or I would dash into the attack by itself.
Yeah, I don't know what it was why we found it so difficult, but I think triangle was dash on the PlayStation, and it was just the most awkward, uncomfortable place. And I don't think we switched the dash button either until the end of our first stream or into our second one.
Yeah. I kept it the whole time, actually.
Yeah, you did. That's right.
Yeah.
I found that difficult. I also want to say too, when you don't play this game for a while and you pick it up, again, with how like sensitive and specific everyone's moves are. Even if you do have a relatively small hitbox, I find it hard to adjust some of that. So there are some times where like I would walk into a boss or jump into a boss because everything just feels really sensitive when you're playing this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the patterns and the phases that this boss goes through here. So you said, just aside from adjusting to the game and being the first boss, what was it about this boss that stood out to you on the easier or hard side?
So I feel like when he first transitions to getting bigger size, like the map already feels cramped. So that is immediately you kind of feel like suffocated for space. And then when he transforms into his last phase of the gravestone, that one just feels unpredictable as far as his when he'll actually slam down. Like he kind of fakes you out a little bit, or it's kind of weird how they immediately put the background as like another. Yeah,
it is weird thinking of a background boss in this place, just because, you know, you're wondering, am I going to be hit as soon as he starts moving? At what point in that slam am I going to be hit? But aside from that, personally, I think this is a great intro boss because he is relatively easy. He doesn't shoot anything. So you're literally just focusing on moving around him, and I think that's different versus some of the other bosses that we're going to be talking about, even potentially the next boss. So like, to me, this is a great easy boss. I think, you know, like even my husband playing this game managed to beat this boss, and he is not the strongest gamer, you know what I mean? Like, not especially not for a game like this. So where would you foresee this boss going? Because it doesn't really require any special strategy or anything like that. I think he's definitely a joke, you know, but like in the best possible way. Like you would want your first boss to be like a good introduction to the game. Do you agree?
Yeah, honestly, because if I was to replay this game, I wouldn't struggle with it at all. There's no multiple mechanics happening at the same time.
And going back and playing the game on expert too, like he's the easiest boss to get an S on, which is like a trophy. He's built for that purpose. Like, I really just think he shows the mechanics of the game in such a way that, like, you might die once or twice, but still, I don't think it's hard. You know, if you might have misjudged a jump, but it's not like, oh my god, what's going on? It's a relatively easy. Aside from that, like if you miss that parry window, you're not really getting any parries anywhere else.
Yeah,
but that's not that big of a deal.
No, I can't even remember how many times we died to this boss, if we did.
I don't think we did. You might have.
I probably did.
But I don't think overall. I think like you might have made it to the later end. But yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to the root pack now. I think this is where things get a little bit more spicy in co-op and whatnot.
Yes.
So you have the oh god, who's the first one? The potato.
Yeah.
You have the onion and you have the carrot.
Yeah, and it starts immediately. As soon as it says go, he starts shooting.
So this boss is the complete opposite of Goopy, which I was just kind of saying, where, you know, you have your first boss where they don't shoot anything and you are focused on moving, and this boss, they aren't moving and you're focused on dodging their projectiles and whatnot.
Yep. So it's a lot of small movements, but you have to first just make sure that you're actually hitting him, and then also just watch out for projectiles. Like, his first phase is just jumping and
it teaches you the parry too. Like, you pay attention to the cadence in which he shoots out. Is it worms? Is that right? Like,
it's like the dirt balls, and then the parries are worms.
The parry's the worms. Like, you pay attention to the cadence of a shot, and it's always the last shot that's the parryable one. But like, I really feel like it shows that like you need to pay attention to how enemies attack.
Yeah.
How would you say, like, with both of us on the screen, this was? I personally didn't think it was that hard to navigate. But
no, this one was a lot better than a lot of the later ones.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this boss, honestly.
Yeah, this was a good one. I know we had a loss on this one because, so I know some people know this, but if you don't attack the second phase, the third phase is actually harder.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that like that would be that much of a challenge, but I don't think we were used to the number of things going on the screen at that point. And you get that little freaking radish that's just like skirting the bottom of the stage. Then you have something that you have to dodge that's moving around, but
because the last phase you have multiple projectiles. It can be like up to like 3, I think, carrots at a time that are homing, and then he has like his mind control waves that he shoots at you, which those are pretty much just you're either on the middle of the screen to dodge, the left screen, or the right side of the screen to dodge. So,
and I feel like for this stage too, it's not particularly hard because you can full on strategy the carrots. Like one person can completely shoot every oncoming projectile, and then of course, like you said, you have to dodge the wave, and then the other person can just take on the boss. So I feel like this is kind of like an ideal teamwork boss.
Yeah, I think for co-op, this is a better tutorial than the first boss is.
You think so?
Yeah.
Huh, okay. I would say that like has just the tiniest bit more of difficulty just because like phase 2, it's really hard to gauge the teardrops coming down. Like it's not like there's a lot of them, but I feel like with 2 people on the screen, you are looking up. They come down a little fast, but I don't know if I would personally say that he's easier than
I don't think I definitely think he's harder.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he's definitely just as easy.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. Okay. There goes the easiness. I feel like there might not be that many other people that we throw in this. Now we're at Hilda.
Yes.
Oof.
Oof, indeed.
Oof. So, like, for those of you who don't know, if you haven't played it, Cuphead is like your standard, like, platformy game, a little bit bullet helly in some parts. It's a boss rush game, so you're only tackling bosses, but you have some of these bosses where you're tackling a completely new mechanic, and that is, it's like those old, the Gradius games where you're like flying, and it's more of a bullet hell in that way as opposed to just being like a character on land, and it completely changes the dynamic of the game.
It becomes so much more stressful immediately.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of difficulty with all the flying ones.
It's like we would get in this wave of getting really good at it to immediately worse for like a really solid period of time to then just luck.
It took us a long time to get through phases. And I will also tell you too, this was the last boss that I did on getting my platinum trophy because she was the boss that I had the most difficulty with.
Wow.
It was I struggled on expert mode with all of the flight bosses, but this was the hardest of them for me. But I know that's not necessarily the case for everyone, but for me this was the hardest. First phase, you have the little planes coming forward and shooting. You have her laughing and like the whirs hit you, and then she'll also shift into different forms. I found her laughing the hardest thing to dodge, and I don't know why. And I think this is kind of where we said, like, it's kind of hard to tell who's who, even if you're a color difference. Sometimes it's just a little hard to tell who's who.
Yeah, and there's another completely brand new mechanic for the plane where you can shrink down in size, but you move faster, and sometimes it's just... you don't realize how fast that movement is, and your
hitbox is like minuscule, but your shots don't go anywhere, and you are zipping, and sometimes it's a necessity. Like I can't imagine making through some of the sections without using that a little bit. But I know you particularly struggled in this one. I definitely struggled. I
think this is where we noticed how little I was using my supers too.
Yes. I think this is when I was like continuing to say like, Use your super. Please,
Yeah.
dear God. Use your, because
Please use your supers.
there are a lot of times for this boss, which is fortunate, where like I feel like she's long, like she's wide, so you can hit her multiple times with your standard.
Yeah.
Super
An
moves instead of the
additional
big
struggle
one.
that I had was where I was sitting. My part of the screen where my supers were charging up was cut off. So I didn't even know I had those until you mentioned it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I forgot
Yeah.
my microphone because we were obviously this is a local co-op game. You were on the side where the mic was in the way, so that does make it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
But aside from yeah,
Making it harder for myself.
Setup issues. I also found when she transforms into the bull, like a large physical movement is really hard to dodge, especially when you're trying to shoot, because she's constantly moving up and down, and if you're following her, like, she's gonna jab you.
Yeah. That in the moon phase. So in the moon phase, there's these UFOs that you have to make like quick judgments of what side you're going to be on, because if you get stuck, because the UFOs basically shoot just a line across the entire screen.
Yeah, they have like what are the whatchamacallit beam.
Yeah, to beam you up.
Like a transport beam. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it hurts you. And if it hasn't appeared in like the first half of what's left of the space that she leaves you, which is not much space, it's going to shoot in the second half and all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like if it shoots right away, it's not going to be on the second half, and that's just so hard to tell because you also have stars that you have to dodge.
Exactly. So you're cramped and you're right in her face, and you have to like wait that 3 seconds to move back.
And you like honestly, I feel like you have nothing left at that point too. I think it was so hard to master the first two phases of her, which her first phase and her second phase, it's just really just a different like transformation at that point. But her third phase, like it just feels like you don't have much left. So where would you put her? For
me, I would put this as the first hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think this is definitely one where if you're playing co-op, it is hard to adjust to so many things going on at the stage. Like you have some of the bosses who are shooting, or some of the minions shooting like a single bullet or multiple bullets at you. Yeah. She's shooting tornadoes at you. She's potentially dashing at you. Like there's a lot going on in this stage for two people, to the point where I think we even had like a frame rate issue.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. That's non-stop projectiles on this one.
So I know we're going to have a lot of bosses in hard. I think that's going to be kind of like the gauge here. I think that she's maybe on the upper side of hard. I don't think she's unfair. And I think that's probably what like the hardest tier is, but where you're like, this was hard and it kind of felt unfair with two people. Definitely not that.
Agreed.
Okay, moving on. We're at Cagney, the flower boss.
Yes.
Why don't you take us on in for this boss, kind of describing what we see and how you felt.
I think this boss really only has a few hard mechanics. This is the first boss that makes you really care about like where you're at as far as planes. Like that's basically like a 2-level boss.
Yeah, that's a good point and good assessment right there too.
Yeah. I love this boss, honestly. All the mechanics are fun. There's only one that like really felt like hard to dodge, and that's just because you have so many projectiles going on the screen.
Which one was that?
I think the root going under. If you forget to jump up, then I mean, Are you
talking about when they extend like the length of the screen?
Yeah, so they do the route on the entire ground level. So you have to jump up on a platform, and then it'll force you to jump to other, because you have 3 platforms that you can jump on, and sometimes they'll do 2 vines that extend. So you have.
Oh, you're talking about phase 2 when like it wraps around 2 of the platforms. I get what you're talking about.
Yeah, so you still have to dodge projectiles, parry, and shoot the boss while you're forced to stay on that like second level.
Yeah, I don't know. This boss, I think the challenge comes from like it's the first boss where you feel like you have to look at multiple places at once.
Yeah.
And I know that like for some people that's really hard. Because like I feel like I have one eye going where I am, and then I have my other eye looking at what's coming next to the boss, and I don't think that is easy for people to process. But I don't think that really happens until phase 2. And I don't think that there's enough going on. Like you're saying, like that's kind of the one attack where something else might be going on when that attack happens. But aside from that, like it's more, do you know where you are on the platform? Because I think I remember both of us were using Lobber, which is not a great weapon for this boss. We were just go and do it for the damage, but like we were shooting ourselves off the platform because of the knockback, which is an us issue, not like a boss issue.
Right. I definitely think we could have changed weapons to like the scatter shot. I think that would have been a lot better.
Yeah, just getting up in the face and whatnot. All right. I think that this boss is maybe like the lowest of easies for now. I don't think the boss is a joke, just because, you know, especially the pollen attack at the very beginning, like if you don't parry one of the pollens and you you don't defeat some of the minions right away, like it can get a little chaotic there. But I don't think this boss is hard or fair or normal or whatever you want to phrase it.
I'm perfectly in agreement of that spot.
Yeah, definitely on the easier side. Okay, so now wrapping up aisle 1, we have Ribby and Croaks.
Yes. I remember struggling a lot with this one.
Yeah, this boss, again, I think this is one of those ones where, so 3 phases, both on the same side, either summoning minions or shooting projectiles at you, both on opposite sides, one assisting by pushing you back, the other one shooting projectiles at you, and then they turn into phase 3, which is the slot machine.
Right.
Which that like has a random chance of like what the phase looks like. Okay, I personally don't think that this one is that bad.
Yeah, I think this is the first stage that messed me up because I would confuse myself for you, and then like the first phase, there's like these balls that move
easiest.
They move up and down, but I feel like I got hit by those a lot, and then by the last phase I was dying and you were having to do that part by yourself.
Yeah, I think this is when we finally hit that hurdle of like I had to carry, which obviously no problem, because I mean like that's just the game.
Right.
I also think too, I don't know if this is for sure, but I think once the other person's officially dead and you can't resurrect them, like the boss reverts back to single player difficulty.
Oh, really?
I don't know for sure. Like we could see and look that up, but for some reason I just felt like I got through some phases. I'm like, there's no way that one person is doing enough damage to make it through this phase fast enough. It felt like they cut it back to regular health. And I think that this was the first boss where I noticed it. I think phase 1, not a problem between the two attacks. Like here, you could divide and conquer again. One person is phasing the boss, the other person is hitting the minions, and then you both just need to figure out the punching move. I don't think there's enough going on there. Phase 2 gets a little bit tricky just because of the pushing back, but even still, I don't think there was ever enough that we had issues with it. I think this is the first battle that we used. What's it called? The one that hooks back.
Oh, like I know what you're talking about. The
attack that like is it loop or something like that? And like
I think that's it.
And I think like that got a little chaotic because there was a lot of blue going on the screen, but it wasn't that bad. But I think phase 3, it can go really easy or really hard because some like one of them with the bouncing balls, very very tough. The up and down, where's the fire gonna go?
Yeah, so it's basically
really hard.
Platforms, and they shoot lasers up or down. And they're pretty quick too. And like they also have spikes on the side. So,
but at the end of the day, like co-op wise, which is like kind of our guiding principle on this, I don't feel like this boss was any harder. And I don't
either.
think that it was a sticking point. So I feel like this is like our just middle ground boss. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think this is probably the easiest to learn all the patterns.
Yeah. Aside from phase 3. Sometimes, right. I know you brought this up, but I do think that this is a really good point. And if they ever, I don't think they're going to make a Cuphead sequel, but if they ever do, or if anybody ever desires making something like this, having the ability that like once you make it to a boss to be able to test phases would be really helpful, because it is tough when you struggle to make it to a phase that you don't feel like you have the skill set to pull through, because like, well, I only have one hit left. Of course I'm not going to make it through that. And of course it can make it really exciting when you're like, oh my god, how'd I did that? And like, we had that experience several times.
Absolutely. I think that should be a feature that's unlockable after you beat the boss once at least.
Well, but I don't even know if once, because like, you know, if you're struggling with it, then you should be able to practice that, because at the end of the day, like, you're still playing the game, even if you're like, I just want to test phase 3, I'm really struggling with phase 2.
Yeah, that's true. You still have to eventually do all of them in succession, so
yeah. So okay, but yeah, so anybody who's gonna make a game like Cuphead, or people who make Cuphead, love your game, obviously, but that could be a feature that could help out players, just because I don't know if beginner isn't a good reflection of the full boss experience.
No.
Okay, moving on to aisle 2. Are you pretty confident with how things are so far?
Yeah, I think all of those are pretty perfect.
This is where things started to get a little spicy for us, and I feel like this is where co-op kind of went back and forth.
Yeah, I think because this is the first run and guns like area too, right?
No, there were run and guns in the first.
Okay.
For the first world. I just feel like the run and guns in the first part are relatively easy. Did I tell you that they're the pacifist trophy? You have to make through the run and guns without killing anything.
Yeah, that sounds very awful.
It actually, like, with Miss Chalice, not so bad.
Yeah.
And to the point where I think I had an easier time with some of them, like that one where you go upside down, not killing anything, than trying to kill everything.
Yeah. I mean, if you practice it enough, that's...
Yeah, definitely the case. All right, well, here we are with Baroness von Bon. I'll let you take the reign on this one. Aside from saying, this is one of the first bosses where the boss is like phased minions, and then you fight the boss, and those can be random. But go ahead and talk about that a little bit. Yeah,
so right away, I think this is such a like spike in difficulty. At least for me, it was. At least until you learn all of the minions, it's always feels like a different fight.
I think this was when you switched to the homing shot, right?
It was definitely later in the playthrough.
Was it?
I think so. It took me a while to finally equip to that, which I should have earlier for sure.
So yeah, she has like 3, maybe 4 candy minions. Right. She has the cupcake. She has the gumball machine. Yeah. She has the gumball, and then the waffle. Is that right?
Yeah, the waffle. I feel like that one I like the most because it's kind of short range.
Depending on what one you get really changes the experience.
Exactly.
In multiplayer, like I think the waffle and the gumball are the easiest because there's not a lot going on the screen. You know, like if you can figure out their pattern, like the gumball just kind of like does an 8 or a rectangle around the screen, and then the waffle, like if you just stand far enough away, you're not getting hit. It's just not. It's not going to happen. But the other two, not so much.
Yeah, I think that the last phase was definitely the hardest for me because you have to... The screen is moving, she's chasing you, shooting you, her head comes off and does like kind of a harder movement pattern than maybe the rest. Well,
it's like tracking you, but not tracking you consecutively. It's like...
Yeah.
It's like a turn-based battle. It's like I used up all
Yeah.
my move this round.
But like the movement of the head is like kind of blurry, and it just makes the movement of it feel like not as predictable, at least for me. And it also makes you feel cramped because when you're parrying the peppermint while getting shot at, it becomes a lot, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that there's a lot going on here, but would you say that, like, co-op made this harder, or it felt like hard or unfair? Or would you just say, like, it had it was challenging, but not, like, terrible?
I think this was the first boss that I felt bad of how much I was dying and how you had to carry this one.
Yeah, this is from my perspective on like maybe, and again, I'm not throwing shade, but like just the more skilled or more veteran experience where I didn't think that this boss was that bad, and I don't think that you did that badly. And I don't think that co-op was impacting you.
Yeah, I think it was just me not being great at the mechanics for this one.
So I would at least say like on the harder side of normals. Right.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I would throw this with hard looking at the rest of the list.
Yeah. I think it would have been harder if you also didn't know the mechanics at first.
Right. Yeah. Knowing what was coming, but still, like, even I remember solo playing this. This wasn't one that I struggled with. Aside from like, unless you get the cupcake, I think that like even the gumball with like them scattering everywhere, there's a lot going on the screen, but at the very least, like, you know, they're arcing down. It's not like the shots are on the level with you, so they're not getting mixed in with your shots. That's not ever a problem that really happens here. But like the cupcake's just a bitch. Like, God, anytime I get the cupcake on expert mode, I would just reset.
Yeah, this is the beginning of resets.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we are at Beppi the clown. Oh my god. God.
I really didn't know if we were gonna make it through this one.
I will say this, on expert, I S'd this, did not take a single hit. But I think it's because I came in super confident with how I handled the end of us playing it.
Yes.
This was a tough one.
I think that changed you as a person.
It really did. So like we'll go through the phases and we'll talk about, there's so many phases this boss.
Yeah.
The first phase is a struggle, and like it really shouldn't be. So you have these like duck targets on the top row. And like some of them will drop things on you, and like if you don't shoot them once, you can't successfully jump over the boss. And the boss is in like a bumper car, and he's like such an erratic movement where you can tell when he's coming, but like it's still a little hard to predict. Like he could do it any time. This is the perfect phase for the smoke bomb, which I might like amendment. I use smoke bomb the entire time until Miss Chalice, you were using a heart.
Yeah. And like the color scheme of some of the enemies that first phase too kind of blend in a little bit, because the same like color as like the passengers, and then like the backdrop.
Well, yeah, when we get we're so phase one, you know, like yes, you can make it through. It's a little rough, but not terrible. But like you're saying, phase two, you have two things to worry about. You have his shots, and you have a fucking roller coaster to dodge. And there were so many times where we were both like, I don't know what just hit me.
Yeah, this is absolutely, because the speed of the roller coaster, constantly jumping, dodging, and shooting, my brain was breaking. Absolutely.
And that is in every phase. All together. And there were some times where like I feel like I got hit because you got hit, and vice versa, where like it psyched me out. Like, and I think that's one of those things that's really hard to navigate a game like this, where, you know, you're on the same plane, you have limited movement. This isn't a multiple tier level until the final phase. So like, if I see something happen to you, I'm like clenching and overreacting when I shouldn't, and vice versa. Like I feel like there are times you probably see me do something, you're like, oh, Patrick's jumping, I need to jump.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I don't know, you just did something amazing at the end where you just completely locked in and just avoided everything and just
So
I couldn't believe it.
there was so much going on, and that you died in phase 2, I think, and there are 4 phases. And in phase 4, if you had been there, I wouldn't have been able to do it because, like, you have the roller coaster still, and then he shoots out these like little minions that shoot baseballs at you. And he's a giant carousel now, and you're like jumping on the different platforms of the carousel.
And the roller coaster comes back.
And the roller coaster comes back and completely like clobbers his minions and takes them out. I don't know how I successfully dodged that, but I guarantee you, if your shots and my shots were there, I wouldn't have made it through. I
think for me, this is the first F that guy.
You think so?
Yeah, because as far as co-op changing this boss fight, I think it did.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Again, from a co-op standpoint, because I know, like, if you're coming in from the standpoint of solo play, or if you're like an expert runner, like, I know that you can set up Lobber when he's coming up from his carousel form, and like, so there are some bosses where if you start shooting Lobber up in the air and you're jumping, you can get enough of them going that when the boss finally has its hitbox appears, it's instantly taking like 10 shots.
That's so you're getting a headset.
And this is one of those bosses you can do. Like, I know that there are those tricks, but we're not really focusing on those tricks. We're focusing on like the insanity of multiplayer. And I think you're right. Like, this is one of those ones where, God, there's just so much going on the screen. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm confident with that. Is this the hardest one? Absolutely not.
No.
But this is a hard one. We'll get to the I have thoughts on the hardest one later.
Yeah.
Much later. All right. Djimmi the Great, on our next flying level, and we're actually back to back on flying levels. What were your thoughts on Djimmi?
I feel like you hated this one more than I did.
Yeah. I think it's because I knew how much of a hard time I had it when I played it myself the first time.
Yeah, I felt like we got really, really good at the first 2 phases.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm pretty sure you carried me at the end.
Yeah, I definitely finished this one. I think the caveat for this one, 100%, is that first phase makes or breaks the experience.
Yeah.
I think if you get the cats... I personally find the cats the hardest thing to dodge. I don't know if everybody would agree. I think the swords and the jewelry are much easier to dodge than the cats. But again, this is coming from a 2-person standpoint, but you have the shots that you're letting go. You have the other player and you're moving, and there's just so much to look at that first phase is rough. I don't think any of the other phases are rough at all.
Yeah, because like the second phase is just moving up and down, shooting the head, and unless you go into the tiny mode and just overshoot your movement, I don't think you're getting hit in that phase.
Yeah, you literally can go up to the top and shoot bombs, and like, I don't think you can get hit because your bombs will hit the minions he shoots. So I don't think that one's bad at all. No. The puppet phase, I don't think is that bad. You're just basically moving around, and like, it's a great time to catch up on parries.
Yeah.
That fourth phase, that last phase though, I know you weren't there for that. You were definitely checked out at that point.
Absolutely.
The amount of things spinning again, and I hate those attacks. I call them cross attacks. I don't really know else how to describe them, but it's something that like has a line that either goes vertically or horizontally or both.
Yeah.
And if you aren't moving with it, you can't dodge it. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that you can do to get through it or around it, because it's just going to check you unless you already know its movement. And that's hard to focus on when you're like looking forward to the boss. So I think, especially with your throwing in everyone's attacks, because at that point it was just spamming specials, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That last phase looks extremely hard, and I'm glad that you did it.
But again, I think also too, like, just it's some of those things where you just feel like you don't have anything left.
Yeah.
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 But I think you're right. Like I don't think this boss was as hard as I made it out to be. Because I definitely struggled with the first time, but I don't think it's as hard as Hilda.
I don't think so either.
Where do you think we should throw this one?
I think this is a normal.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I think this is kind of, aside from that first phase, this doesn't get hindered by co-op, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Wally. Need to preface this again. This was the second hardest boss for me on Expert.
Oh yeah.
And this boss was fucking insane.
I think this boss deflated me to the point where that I was ready to go home. Like I could not wait for us to beat this boss.
Yeah, I know you were tired that day. Like I remember looking over at you and I'm like, oh god, he's gassing. He's gaslighting.
Yeah.
So this boss, we have another three phaser. Shoots eggs at you, and then has like some minions that pop out. I think the hardest thing about this boss is that it's trying to coach you that you can't use the back of the stage anymore.
Yeah.
But you also can't be up in the boss's taint.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're going to get hit by like its eggs right away.
Yeah. I don't know. It's another one of those bosses where you feel cramped a lot of the time.
You do. Especially when you get to... I think that's a great way to describe this boss.
Yeah.
You feel cramped. And when you're playing co-op, that feels even worse.
Yeah. All of his phases are so chaotic. Like, starting with like the feathers... Your movement is so limited.
Yeah.
And
which I will say, I don't find phase 2 that hard because there's a rhythm to it. Right. But I will also say I didn't find phase 2 as hard when you weren't there.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah. And again, I don't mean that as shade whatsoever. Just there's just less to focus on.
Yeah, exactly. Because any bullet hell type levels, it gets so confusing.
And fortunately, like, you can do it so, like, you're basically repeating the same loop 3 times. Like, I think his shots always come out in the same cadence, in the same angles.
Yeah.
So if you, of where you are. Like, I know if you're in a different place, that they're going to come out a little bit differently. But, like, for that round when he shoots them, if you get the rhythm of how to fly around, then you're good. And you can still hit him. But if you don't, it's rough.
I do like that this is a boss where, like, I feel like it utilizes using, like, what are the bombs called that drop more at an angle? Yes.
And you know what? We missed a phase, too. I forgot about the baby phase.
Yeah, the baby phase is just... It's just goblin mode.
Yeah, it's not, like, the worst thing in the world, but, like, it's tough. It's nice because it's a breather, but again, you have that claustrophobia of, like, the spikes going around and coming back in.
Yeah, anything that, like, surrounds you, not a fan of.
Yeah, makes it hard.
Yeah, he's moving closer to you while those are just, like... You remember those old toys that, like, collapse the balls that, like, expand and collapse?
Yeah. That's exactly what
it feels. Yeah,
that's exactly what that feels like. So... Where are we throwing Mr. Wally? From a co-op standpoint, where does this guy land?
I don't know. I still feel...
Again, I think if we throw them on the tier we want to throw them on at the very least, then we're good. You know, we can arrange it later.
Yeah, I feel like it has phases where... co-op, it doesn't change. But the beginning of it, I feel like definitely does.
Yeah, I think this is definitely hard. I think it's harder than Hilda. I don't know if this is an F that guy though.
I don't think so. Not yet.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like, I think that this is definitely a little easier than Hilda for sure. And, like, I can see some bosses being in between that.
Yeah,
too.
Absolutely.
All right, wrapping up aisle 2.
Ooh.
We are at Grim Matchstick. Now, I will say this is one of those bosses that everybody says is like the gatekeeper of the game.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of those ones that people tend to really struggle with, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So honestly, I think the first part of this fight was the hardest for me. Like, if I could get through the first part with all of my health, I felt more confident about.
I think we finished this one together, didn't we?
I cannot verify that.
I think we either did or it was close, but I think
we were both getting to the end at least.
Yeah.
What makes this level hard is you only have small platforms, and there's like 3 to 4 different levels of them, but oftentimes you're having to jump like a good amount of space to get to the next one, and his tail, there's not a good sign of like when that tail is coming up.
Yeah, this is another one of those ones where you are looking forward and looking down. Like you're looking at multiple places at once, and that's what makes it hard. And then you also need to factor in pitfalls.
Yeah, and the flame movements are hard. Like, at least I thought they were. I don't know why, but I just.
Do you mean the fireball in part 1, or do you mean the jumping flames in part 2? Okay.
In part 1, yeah. The jumping flames in part 2, I don't think are as hard.
Yeah, I I'm gonna be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think we relatively crushed this one. I know it took us a couple of tries. I don't think that this was a hard co-op boss. I actually think that this boss is easier on co-op.
Nice. I mean, as far as projectiles, it's not as crazy. It's just that they're hard.
Yeah. Like, I think you have it right in, like, the level is what makes this one hard.
Yeah.
Because of the platforms and the tail. Once you factor out the tail, like, phase 2, we got through that so quickly.
Yeah.
Where it was almost never a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just have to, like, move and shoot the fireball. And I think we were both using lobber on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was just too good not to.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know you're going to miss. I know it's a little slower, but, like, it just does so much damage. And the arc is nice, especially for that phase 2. And I don't think phase 3, like, once we got everything down, it was fine. I don't think we had issues with each other in this level.
I don't think so either.
I don't know. I think this one was kind of like normal.
Yeah, like watching back, its mechanics don't seem as crazy as some of the others.
Yeah, I agree. If I feel bad because I feel like I know a lot of people really struggle with this boss, and like I get it. When I played this solo my first time, this was a hard one, but playing this on expert later on, after we did it, I didn't find him hard at all. I don't feel like he added too much. I don't think there's enough chaos going on the screens for us to like interact with each other with. So yeah, I think this is more of a normal boss. Do you think he's harder than Djimmi?
Probably not. I don't think so, because that last phase of Djimmi is pretty hard.
Yeah, and like just the notion of it being a flying level 2.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good place.
I think so too.
Yeah. Okay. Feel weird about that, but we'll keep rolling with it.
Yeah, that might be the one that people question the most.
Yeah, well, I mean, we might have a couple. Again, focusing on the lens of how things went co-op, how this is co-opable, what to expect in co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Rumor honeybottoms.
I was so bad at this one.
Yeah, this level, I like. This is a fuck this one.
Absolutely, just instantly.
Yeah, I think like phase 1, you're just kind of like, oh, this looks like it's easy. It's just a dude who's like sluggishly moving around.
Yeah.
But it's the verticality of it.
It's all the challenge of the clouds from the last fight, but with it getting right up in your face, and there's other enemies that like are chasing you too.
Well, and the nice thing about the clouds, aside from the tail, is like you are always shooting in the same direction,
Yeah.
and the attacks are very like linear. Where here you have like scatter bombs that come out, you have minions, some of it's parryable, and you're constantly moving up. And I feel like it's easier to move forward than it is up.
Yeah, and like there's so much going on just in the background of the screen, like the honey pumps on both sides, and then just the rising levels, and just like the color palette. It's all just so chaotic. It makes the platforming way harder.
Yeah, I think so too. Phase 2, when she actually appears,
Yeah.
I know that there were a lot of times where the missile attack that like zigzags back up,
That got me so many times.
so many times, and I think that we caused each other's issues on that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Phase 3 is not bad.
No. I mean,
I feel like once you're there, you've got it. I think it's learning it. Like there were some times where like, oh, I didn't realize her arm was going to stretch out like that when she was in that airplane.
yeah.
I feel like phase 2 is like there's so many shots going on the stage.
Yeah.
You know, if she does like the giant pink ball, are we parrying? Are we dodging?
Yeah.
So
I
much
really think if this fight was just phase 3, it would be easy.
Yeah,
compared, but
phase 1, phase 3, but like yeah, phase 2 is definitely what makes that. But where do you think that she lands?
ooh, I think this is another F this guy.
You think so?
Yeah, I really did not enjoy this boss at all. Just
If you take a look at the future ones, because I'm just trying to do some pre-work here, would you say that she's still an F this one compared to who's coming up?
Honestly, yeah. For me, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put it on F this, but we'll put it at the bottom of F this for now, because I don't know if I would say like this was. We will never make it past this boss. It was nice playing this game. Have a good one.
I knew you were going to beat this boss. I didn't know if I was going to beat this boss.
I mean, I don't know. Even like this was one of the solo ones. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't think everything in aisle 3 is as hard as people make it out to be. I think there are a couple that are like easy and fun.
Yeah.
She is not, but I personally don't know how much like this was the co-op experience made this hard.
Yeah, and I don't think it did. I feel like for the most part,
let's bump it down to the hardest of hard then.
Yeah, that's a fair way of looking at it.
Because I have a feeling when we get a couple of the other ones up there, we're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of, Captain Brineybeard.
Hey.
Fuck this guy.
Yeah. The one thing I will say I like about this boss...
You beat this boss, right? This is one of the ones that you beat?
Maybe. I have a terrible memory. I'm going to go back and watch the VODs.
I think this is one of the ones where, like, we were constantly reviving each other. And then you might have, like, edged out the victory on it.
Right. I think we had a couple of, like, crazy saves that, like... we didn't know that we saved. And like you're like, hey, there was
one point I saved you and you were just standing there because you thought you were dead. You were just like,
and then I died again. Yeah.
So this boss, I think this is the boss that co-op is hard. Period. Because there are just like you're so like you're kind of like Wally warbles. I think you're so limited on where you can be.
Yeah,
almost the point where I think Wally might be harder than Broomer, but
yeah, I like this boss though because it felt like the first time where we really had to like work together and do call outs for everything.
This was one of the ones where we were calling out like dogfish, octopus, giant fucking laser beam, or all the things
chest is dropping. Yeah.
But there's so many shots that are going on in this stage. Like if you got hit by the ink, our sight is gone. I feel like there was an extra bullet that was coming out of his fish. You know,
yeah.
those spirally fire bombs that the whale shoots out, or
I'm so bad at those.
oh, and the cannonballs too.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this was like one of our hardest experiences.
Yeah,
and I think that being there together, because we basically had to be on top of each other the entire time.
Yeah, I like this fight though because it did like encourage teamwork more for the first time, I think.
I did not like this fight.
Damn, I love that we're on opposite sides.
Yeah,
this
is one of my. I think he's like super cool designed. I get super Mickey Mouse vibes from all of it. Like this is one of the bosses where like I see the inspiration in everything, but like I really see it in this boss. But this boss is just so hard. I think not the hardest that we had, but I think this was like our first big wall.
Yeah,
in this area.
Hardest to yet.
Yeah, I would say hardest yet. What do you think? Like this one we were stuck on for a while.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I'm okay with hard.
Yeah. Oh, hard? I was gonna say F this guy.
Really?
Yeah,
Ooh.
I think this is the F-iest of F this guys that we've had so far. I don't think he's the hardest experience that we had, but this was one where like getting to the last phase was rough. And then there were some points where I just felt like we weren't skilled enough to parry the laser beam.
Yeah.
Because you can just constantly parry it, but we weren't skilled enough for that, and we weren't skilled enough to dodge the spiraling fireballs.
Yeah, I hated those a lot.
And again, just thinking like from a co-op standpoint, when there were the dogfish, we had to be at the very back together on top of each other.
Yeah.
We were basically always on top of each other in this level, and I think that's what made it hard. And it's not like there was just no other option, right?
Yeah, no, there wasn't. Like,
yes.
You're totally right there.
From a co-op standpoint, yeah, I think like that's hard. And I think that's the hard thing too, is like, how are we framing this? We have to remember the frame.
Exactly.
Okay. Next one, Stally stage play. Let's let you talk about this a little bit.
You know, I don't remember much about this one, honestly. Maybe that says something about me because I was dead.
And I beat this the first run.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why you don't remember, because we didn't have to do it several times. Like I went in telling you we will beat this boss in one go.
Yeah,
and sure enough, we beat this boss. This is not a hard boss. Like
incredible.
I know that if I didn't beat it the first time, that you would have been able to make it. Yeah, you would have been able to make it to the end with me. I think this is a good palate cleanse boss. I think because you know, like Act 3, Aisle 3 tends to be so hard. You know, like you have the entire thing is a stage play. The first phase, she's jumping and she's throwing her fan, and I think it only targets one person. Like she'll target one of you. That could be a little misleading in a sense, because she, you know, like if you don't think she's throwing it at you and she ends up throwing at you, you might take the hit. But I also think that sets up that like it's constant pressure that you can apply on the boss because they're dividing their attention.
I'm watching the fight now and it looks like a really just good, like you said, palate cleanse, and there's just a rhythm to the fight that doesn't look that bad at all.
Like for me, from the expert level, the hardest thing about this boss is getting the parries, but it's not the boss's difficulty. Like we call it the Kefka phase. Like that one is fun. Like that's just like a super fun phase, and it's because they're like wide attacks. They're not like millions of lasers that you're dodging or millions of bullets.
Yeah.
So, and then our final phase, you know, she's in her like spectral form, and again, she's just like throwing roses at you, and there's an umbrella dodge on the bottom. I don't feel like any of this. I know you didn't make it to phase 3, but I don't feel like any of this is hard stuff. I think that this is a really like manageable, easy boss because it's just not sheer chaos, you know?
Yeah. I will let you completely rank this.
Yeah.
Like, looking at this boss, it escaped my brain completely.
I feel like that's why I'm throwing her in easy, and I think that it's for Cagney. I think it's kind of a tie, like I think that I don't think she's as hard as Cagney, but I don't necessarily think Cagney's hard. I just she's not memorable, and I think that's just because people don't spend a lot of time on her. And I think what she does really cool. Like, I think that having the whole theme across it is really neat. But like, I didn't feel like this was like a oh dear God boss, right?
Not at all. No. Especially if it just one try done.
Yeah. Like
what happened?
I think I said like right before we did this, like 2 tries max. Like this is not going to be a hard one at all. So
yeah.
All right, moving on to Werner Werman. Let's let you talk about this one a little bit since I got to hit the last one, and then I'll chime in.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty fun one as far as like not too crazy mechanics.
Yeah.
This was just a fun one, and I loved the whole design of it. And I don't think it was crazy enough to the point where us both being on the screen made a difference either.
I think there's only one part, but I think they also remedy it. So in phase 1, when he's in his tin can, like I know you can just jump and dash over his head, and I don't know if many people know that. I know it's a little precise, but if you so you can smoke bomb, you can just smoke bomb through him. But he shoots the 2 platforms out that you can use to bounce. I think if both people are attempting to use one platform, that might get a little iffy.
Right.
But aside from that, like I think you're right. Like all of your shots, you're not jumping and shooting at this boss. You're definitely just like sticking to the ground in phase 1.
Yeah, and you're almost always facing him, like, and the like the cannon or trebuchet type shot that he has at the beginning.
Oh, the catapult.
Yeah, that's not hard to dodge. The platforms to like dash over him, especially if you have the smoke bomb, kind of makes it super easy. So phase 1 is not bad at all.
And then we hit to phase 2 where he stays in the middle of the stage, and then he has the bottle cap saws coming out the side. How did you feel about that part? I have opinions, but I'm curious what you think about it.
I don't think it's too terrible as long as you're staying close to him. I think this is a perfect, obviously, for the scatter shot. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think it was too crazy.
No, especially like I think what we did naturally was you went to one side and I went to the other side, and then we just cooked. And I think this is a great multiplayer boss for that reason. I think like it is designed well for multiplayer because you have that option in this stage where like you do have a narrow dodge window, but at the very least, if you split up to opposite sides, there is the case of like one entire side moving forward, but you can still go under him. Or like, I don't know if we ever like maybe once, I think it took us a couple tries, but maybe once we saw it where the entire side moves over and attacks you, because we just got through that phase so quickly.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember. I don't think so. I don't know. I liked that whole fight. The final phase where he's it's like the cat, right?
Yeah,
where
the cat robot.
Yeah, and he's like scratching you from both sides. I don't know. I feel like this is another one of those fights where it is almost like a palate cleanser, where it's not as hard.
Yeah, I agree. I think this phase specifically can be chaotic. I think this is the other boss that you finished without me. I know I'm a couple of them to the end, and then I might have got cheesed out. I don't remember specifically. I know like there were like two bosses that you beat without me, just because of how things went at the end. But the end for me is pretty chaotic, especially in multiplayer, because there's a lot going on with things falling, but all at the same time, like you can get through that phase relatively quickly. Like there's either a bunch of bouncing balls, or there's debris falling from the ceiling. Or
when it's all 3 things, that's when it's more stressful to me. when it's just the hand and the falling debris, I can handle that. But when it's the bouncing ball,
well, and it's never,
the
it's
debris
usually not like 3 things at once. Like I think they don't
Yeah.
make it so it's impossible to do, because that wouldn't be. I don't remember ever that happening, but
Yeah. Yeah. I like this boss.
yeah.
I think it's a normal for me.
Yeah, I think, would you say it's probably like the middle of normal?
Yeah. But I mean, I guess if we're looking at it from a co-op stance, I feel like maybe lower bottom normal.
Yeah, okay, I'm down with that. I think that this
Yeah.
is one of the ones where like this boss was made for co-op. I don't
Yeah.
think that this boss is hard. I think this boss is fun. I think they teach you some mechanics for the final boss in this boss if you pay attention. Some of the attacks in the middle phase and last phase are very similar to the final boss.
Yeah. And that's what the game should do, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Dr. Cal's robot. I'm just gonna go ahead.
Yeah,
put him in.
go
Yeah,
for
it's
it.
I don't know a world where this boss is easy.
No.
This was also one of the ones where on expert mode, this was just like impossible.
This has all my least favorite mechanics.
Yeah, do you think that this boss would be easy in multiplayer in phase 1? Because it's, he has the 3 tiers of where you can hit him, but
Yeah.
because there's so much going on and because your damage is reduced, you're not taking out his minions that zigzag up the screen with 2 bombs. Like, it takes more than that.
Yeah.
Once you blow up one and the hand starts coming out, or the magnet, that's rough. And if one person hasn't done their job taking out the minions and the giant laser beam from his head starts going, it's just like game over.
Yeah. That phase where he is doing the bullet hell, where you have to weave in and out of the bullets.
The end
plus
phase.
Plus the magnet.
I don't think you ever made it there.
No. And if I did, I would probably die on purpose, so I didn't have to live that life anymore.
Yeah, this boss is just hard, period. Like, to the point where I would say this might be the hardest boss in the game, maybe?
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. I think it depends on, like, how you look at it. I definitely the hardest flyer.
Yeah.
I don't know. That last phase, I don't know if you ever would have made it at your skill level at that time, because I barely made it, and it goes on forever. Like the 3rd phase is so long to the point where I almost gave up because I only had 1 health left. I was looking good going into that phase, and even for a little while, like I remember dodging in between the bullet hell parts, and then it all fell apart really quickly, and I'm like, oh my god,
yeah.
like I've hit him so much, and then just somehow eked out a win.
Yeah, and there's only like that small pocket where you feel like you have, like he's an easy target. Like otherwise, you're getting like 2-3 shots. You have to start dodging it. 2-3 shots, dodge. Like,
yeah,
I hate it.
Yeah, I hate this boss. I don't enjoy playing this boss. Kind of like what we said with the last 1 or 2, or like several. There are some fun mechanics going on. It makes it fun to engage with. This one is just not fun, frustrating, super difficult. And because of the amount of things going on, I don't think it's easier on co-op. I actually think like this would be harder. If we were both doing the phase 3 together, I feel like I wouldn't be able to handle it.
No, it's too much on screen.
Yeah, it would be way too much on screen.
And forget reviving. It's not possible.
Yeah, unless you're in that like one little break, because eventually he does like switch up his shots. But yeah, I think because you have to be laser focused on how you dodge, it's an even tighter window than like Wally Warbles is, because you have to pay attention to the barriers that are like on the top and the bottom of the screen. I don't think so. So I think he's just easily, I think he will be the hardest boss, period.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of hard bosses, Cala Maria.
I'm proud of this one.
Yes, this was, I know you finished this one.
Yeah. This is one where I feel like up until like the last few tries, I was not making it to the end. Like, and it took us forever to get back to a point where we both were getting to the end.
This one, again, multiplayer, I just feel like it's just so unfair.
Yeah.
And the phase 1 with the seahorse that's shooting water and spraying.
Yeah.
And you're mixing that in with whatever, if it's the ghost attacks, like you're doomed. Like it is over. Like you can kind of tell where you are with one person.
Right.
But when it's two people and you're both trying to like either move forward or move down or whatever you need to do to dodge, like it's just not happening. You can't tell.
No. You have to have perfect movement for phase 1.
You do, truly.
Mm-hmm.
So and phase 2 would be one of those phases where you think it would be easier with the eel.
Yeah.
When she becomes like all Medusa and whatnot. Did you find that any easier?
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we just got really lucky on it and we were getting through it with no problems.
I think if we saved our like full meter super for it was easier because you'd like demolish the eels. Yeah. Like, yeah. If we were trying to skip the phase, but if not, like again, I feel like that's another one. The eels shoot so much, and unlike the robot, at least there's like a rhyme and reason to the robot, and how like there's a method to the madness. Like you can do a pattern. If all the eels are out and they're shooting at you, there could just be no window to dodge. Like the end.
Yeah, it was one where if I felt like we did really bad on the first phase, I didn't even want to do the second phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very much that.
Yeah, so...
And then phase 3, I don't think is that hard. It's just the fact that there was nothing left at that point.
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of the times that we did get to the third phase, we had 1 health. And then we would get, like, stoned...
Because I think there were like 3 attempts that I had where I made it to the very end and I just choked because I couldn't keep up with like dodging the petrification.
Yeah, the petrification, you just get doomed because of it. I feel like on the one that I finally made it through, I actually did make it like with a lot of health, and that's probably because of the accessories I had equipped.
Yeah, probably. I think you might have been at 5 at that point.
Yeah, and so it was really worth it.
Where do you want to place her? I still think the robot's the hardest one. But
100%. Just because of how hard the robot guy is.
Like right below the... Because I don't think that she's as... I think she's harder than the pirate.
Yeah, she's a really hard boss, but like her phases can be really short.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that for now, saying that she is the second hardest is pretty reasonable from co-op, just because, again, this is one of those, there's a lot going on the screen. You could have a ton of blowfish coming at you. You could have 2 attacks coming at you. I know, like, the seahorse doesn't do any damage, but it's limiting your movement, and then you are on top of the other player, which makes it really hard to dodge. I think she's pretty much in the right place.
Yeah.
All right. Wrapping up aisle 3, we have the Phantom Express. Did we or did we not suplex this express?
We absolutely did. This was another boss where it forces teamwork, and we're doing call outs. I like this boss.
Yeah, this was we definitely got back to the, hey, I need you to take out the ghost. Hey, I need you to parry that, and the other person would focus. I know it took us multiple tries, but I don't think that this boss was hard. I actually think that it was easier because of multiplayer.
Yeah.
Until the last phase.
Yeah, the last phase was pretty brutal. This was another boss where we were just like, what did we just get hit by?
Yeah. Phase 1 is a joke with 2 people. Truly. Phase 2, once you realize, like, have one person move you around to where you're supposed to be and the other person shoot with the slamming hands. Totally good. Phase 3, if you work one side fast enough, which two of you can do, easy. And then the other person can be in charge of the ghosts and making sure you're not moving where you don't want to go. But phase 4, the train phase,
gross, disgusting.
There's just so much going on.
Just the model alone is distracting enough without the projectiles.
I think we had to stop using the move that we were using because it was shooting so fast and staying on the screen for so long that we like couldn't see the enemy shots. Like I couldn't see the bone going across the bottom of the stage. I definitely couldn't see the fire coming out of the engine.
Yeah, that got us quite a few times where it would just hit us, and like most of the time I feel like we were getting that phase with only like 2 to like 1 hit left. Like
maybe that's what we needed to do there too, was like still continue the teamwork, and just one person focuses on dodging and moving the train around and the other person just tackles the boss.
Yeah, I think we were just way too focused on all gas, just kill it.
Yeah, I agree. But again, I think co-op wise, like this was a pretty good boss. It's a fun boss. I think it's made for co-op. Truly,
I agree.
Like more than single player. I think single player gets a little bit harder to juggle. Not like it's hard, but it's a little harder to juggle some of the things that are going on. So where do you want to throw this one?
I think like the low end of normal.
You think the low end of normal?
Yeah, I don't think, because like the first until the last phases, I feel like it's perfect. Like as far as difficulty.
Well, I still think it took us a lot of tries though.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're communicating with your teammate, it's good. I'm gonna put him here for now. I don't feel good about it, so we can talk about it at the end.
Sure.
Okay. All right, last 2 bosses. We're gonna lump King Dice together. I know that he has all of his little minions, and I know that the minions can really break the experience depending on which ones you get. But where we struggled most, do you want to fill this in?
Yeah.
What was our biggest struggle?
By the time we did this boss a ton of times, we devised a plan that we only want 2.
2, 5, and like 7. Is that right?
Yeah. So we just hated 3.
Yeah.
Every time we got
which everybody
3,
says that 3 is an easy one, but I think 3, the cigar, is easiest single player. I think that's one of those ones where when you have 2 people going on, because he has another one of those spiral fire attacks, it's so hard to see where it is.
Yeah, multiple projectiles, disgusting. And we just got so unlucky.
Yeah.
Where we were gassed out by the end of that stream.
Yeah, we definitely quit, and this is why I got Miss Chalice. I think the real villain is learning how to roll the dice, because Miss Chalice being able to dash into it is seamless to get the roll that you want. But this took us a long time, not because of the difficulty in the path that we wanted, but in the difficulty of getting the roll that we wanted, because the trio of alcoholic drinks, whatever they're called, like they were super hard with 2 people. They're not as hard with one person, but they're super hard with 2 people. We said the cigar was super hard. It felt like the dice roll, or sorry, not the dice roll, the domino was a little hard, because it's almost like in some points, if you don't parry, you don't make it over the spikes. Yeah,
and sometimes I felt like we were really good at that one. But then every time that we did lose life on that one, it just like felt defeating, because I knew we weren't going to make it to the end at that point.
There's a trophy to no hit this, and I did not have a problem doing this on single player.
Right.
And there are some bosses, like I think once we were able to do it the way we wanted to do it, it was easy. Like the rabbit in the hat, like easy with smoke bomb. The poker chips, easy.
Yeah, poker chips was probably the easiest of all of them.
The 8-ball, easy. Like when you get that path. So I don't think that this, and I don't think King Dice is that hard either.
Yeah.
You just need to know how to parry.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Like, sincerely, I don't think that this boss, even though it took us a long time, I think it was this. It had nothing to do with co-op.
Yeah. I mean,
So maybe it did and maybe it didn't. Like, we just couldn't get our intended path, and that's what the struggle was.
Yeah. And it's just a gauntlet too. Like, you just have to be good enough to last till the end.
I think I told you too that this was inspired by Gunstar Heroes on the Sega, where they have a section like this where you like gauntlet through a bunch of mini bosses in a board game-esque area, and like
That's so cool.
It is really, and like you want to play a fun game. That's definitely one of Sega's bests right there. But yeah, I don't think that this is the hardest experience, but I'm curious where you would place it. It's not like it's difficult. I just don't think it's like...
Yeah. I don't think I made it to the King Dice fight.
But you did make it to the...
To the last, like...
You know, wave. I think you did... I think you... On the time we did it, I think you did make it to King Dice.
Okay.
I think you flopped at the end.
Yeah.
I'll have footage posting, so like obviously whoever is watching this can confirm, but...
Exactly. I mean, it's one of those things where... I also agree that it's not hard, but like any mess ups are very defeating.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
maybe like the lowest end of hard. I don't think it was as hard as like any of the bosses that are in hard. Truly.
Yeah. The difficulty is how long the challenge is.
Or if you get who you want. Like if you get who you want and there's a heart on there, it's a guaranteed you're going to have a seamless time.
Yeah.
And I don't think in any of the intended paths that we wanted, co-op was impacted.
No, I don't think so either.
But again, if you get some of the ones that you don't want, like if you get the racehorse, which is a flying level, that one's terrible on multiple. The cigar is terrible. The first one, which you think would be the easiest, was hard for us. So
yeah, I think we always skipped the racehorse one.
Yeah, always. And you know what? There's another trophy where you have to beat a boss while in shrunk down mode, and you can't hit it unless you're in shrunk down mode in the plane.
Oh, no. Absolutely not.
That's the best boss to do it to, because it has the smallest health bar, and like it's the easiest to predict its attacks.
Makes sense, yeah.
You can just stay up on it. But when you have multiple people and like you got the ghosts in the bottom, I think there's just a lot more going on.
Agreed, yeah.
All right, last one. We have our friend the Devil, the final boss of the game. Curious your thoughts on this one.
I think solo, I could learn this boss fight a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. So we have a 3-phase boss. We have him sitting in his chair.
Yeah.
He has the most attacks in that phase. Like there are just so many. There's the hands clap, there's his head going over the side, he has minions coming out, he has orbs bouncing everywhere, he has flames spinning. Like there are a lot of attacks. Oh, and he becomes a head spider.
I think the hardest part is when he like claps his hands together. And you have to just perfect timing that jump.
I think that's another one where like, because I got to play as Miss Chalice, I could double jump, but I never really had a problem with that one. I do know it is hard to time that. I know that's a great time to use a move, like a special, when you're doing that, because they keep you in the air longer.
Yeah,
I think the only time that this boss felt rough, though, if for the first phase, was when he would do like the orb bounce attack, just because there was so much going on the screen.
Yeah. Any of those type of attacks, I feel like they always would get me anyway.
Yeah.
No matter,
because they're just so erratic, right?
Yeah. But this is definitely a doable phase.
Yeah.
You
made it through that phase, like when we
pretty consistently. Yeah.
And then phase 2, we go into giant head mode. And here he has, which I think is pretty straightforward. Like he has the axe,
Yeah.
that's spirals out, and he has the ear bomb, and if you don't get the bomb quickly enough, then it blows up a significant section of the screen, which I think might be what took you out.
I think it did. All of this is really learnable.
Definitely nothing like co-op that's impacting this and making this hard.
No, like if anything, maybe the supers that we were using made like the screen more busy, but
yeah, and we changed that too. So like for transparency, I had the super for Miss Chalice that like summons all the little spirits and attacks, and that was just a really bad move because that made almost anything impossible. Like it was just so hard to tell. I couldn't tell what was going on. You couldn't tell what was going on. You couldn't see attacks. So when switching off of that is when the difference was made. I felt bad for using that.
Yeah, but I mean that's not too bad. The last phase is...
Well, and like there's kind of like the third part of that phase. I guess there are 4 technically where he brings in the minions. That phase is actually easier with people. I like that might be where you wrapped up, and if not, you might have wrapped up again in phase 2. But like having 2 people in that phase to just like one person can shoot the minions and the other one can shoot the devil. Like that's honestly just easy.
Yeah, and I don't think that the last phase is super hard. You just have to get used to the rhythm of it.
I think it's a little hard just because, and I don't think you made it here. But
I didn't, so I shouldn't talk, right?
having to jump off the platform to jump back on the platform and relying on a parry to do that can be rough because you have like I think it's a poker chip that's like falling on the platform you're on, and he's crying, and you have to like parry off the tears. Like, I find that difficult, but I get it. Like this is the last hurrah. Like this is it. So we're gonna like really choke it up. And unfortunately, that's not a very long phase either.
No, I feel like you can get through it pretty fast. It's just like stressful because you're only on one platform and so many things are happening.
Yeah. So I don't think he's the hardest boss by any means. I think he's a boss that is made easier with co-op in mind too, which is crazy to think because he's the final boss, but
right.
So what are your thoughts? Where do you think we should place him? Like is he harder than King Dice or is he easier than King Dice?
I kind of almost think he's easier because he's like isolated.
Yeah, I think King Dice can go 2 ways. Like we said, like if you're not getting what you want, like King Dice could easily be hard. If you're getting what you want, King Dice is kind of easy. Like the last phase, if you know how to parry, you're fine. And co-op is not impacting that at all, like whatsoever. Unless you're literally jumping on top of each other,
Yeah.
Or if I guess the noise could throw you off. Like, hey, did I get my parry or did the other person get the parry? So maybe that could make that a little harder. But I don't think anything in the devil makes that hard.
No. I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm fine with that right there.
Let's take a look one last time and go over everything. And we'll start from the top and see if anything needs to move around. So we have the robot, Cala Maria. We have Captain Brinyard and Beppi in F this guy. As in, like, for a co-op experience, these were the hardest.
Yeah.
Hang on one sec. Do you agree with the order? And where they are too? Like, do they all belong in this tier, and are they organized correctly?
I think we spent more time on the pirate boss
than Cala Maria.
Yes.
But do you think, from a co-op standpoint, that he was harder than her? Because I don't. I think
I don't. Yeah, when you put it like that, because like at least with that fight, we were able to call things out and help each other.
Yeah.
And then
Beppi was just painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just painful. Which again, like, I'll show that incredible. You guys people would have seen it already because I would have timed it up with our discussion. But I'll throw that up here so people can see like that. Or that crazy save at the end. But yeah, that's just a hard boss. Okay, hard bosses. We have Wally, Bumblebee Lady, Plane Lady, King Dice, and the Devil. Do you agree with the order, and should they all be here?
I mean, honestly, the first two, I think both could be F this guy.
I don't know if I can't see her being anywhere close to those ones.
Yeah.
Like I know we had a hard time with her, but like co-op wise, I don't know if like I think she's just hard, but I don't think that it was harder because of the co-op experience.
Yeah, I think I just had a harder time with it than you did too.
I think I would agree with him.
Yeah.
I don't think I would agree with her.
Yeah, her last phase definitely lowers that.
Yeah, and I also but I also don't know if he felt so impossible in normal mode on.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe
just those first two phases of her is what like makes me feel that way.
Yeah, because once you get past the first phase
yeah.
The third phase is just a joke.
Yeah.
I don't know how this rubs, but I almost feel like the Devil is the hardest of normal. Is that bad to say?
No.
I don't think like you if we had replayed it a few times,
yeah,
you would have got there, and I think you would have made it more seamless. But I also don't want to come across from like the ignorant perspective of like I'm just good at this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean everything from that fight feels learnable in like a good positive way.
And like again, there's so many minions in the third phase that like it's a boon to have another person there. Because I know when I had to go back and beat it again on expert, that was a bit of the rub where like, man, I wished you were there to shoot those things because I was having problem with the current weapon set that I had to not be able to manage him. But like two people can manage that very easily. So I feel like he's easier on this difficulty.
It's just a perfect in-game boss, honestly.
Yeah. Okay, so then for normal, we have the Devil as the hardest. We have Djimmi, we have the Dragon, Candy Lady, Frog Brothers, Ghost Train, and Mouse.
I feel like
let's start with
I know different than yours.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about these last two here in a sec. Let's talk about these first 5 first, because I have a feeling we're going to make some changes to where they are on the tier list. So let's talk about these guys. What do you think about the order of these 5?
I think the Dragon is easier than the Candy Lady.
Oh, really?
Maybe not, because that first phase is really hard.
For the Dragon? Yeah, I think she doesn't step it up like he does. Where like you only have to focus on the Candy mini boss. For the Dragon, you have to focus on the platforms.
Yeah.
The tail and the fireball. Or his I think it's like his eye shots, whatever those are. Yeah. I almost feel like he's probably harder than Djimmi.
Yeah, I feel like Jimmy's hardest mechanic is just the end.
Yeah, and that's like I personally think Jimmy's hardest mechanic is the very beginning, and I don't think he's hard aside from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay. Co-op for the Frog Brothers, I feel like is great until the last phase.
But even then, I don't think the last phase is hindered by co-op.
So the coin, knowing who it's gonna lock onto, is a little hard. Oh man, let me tell you on expert, it fires nonstop. Ew. Like it is hard to pick a window. Like you literally have to loop the arena to be able to get it to a point where you can jump, parry it, and get away in time to not get hit by it. It's rough.
No.
That was definitely a hard expert boss. I think it's actually fine where it is. May I entertain the idea of moving these two down to easy?
Yes. After everything, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Wally is a fun. No, that's not Wally. Werner is a good boss. I think, honestly, he could have come sooner in the lineup. If we had to scale things, like if they put every boss in order of how they presume difficulty would be, but because he's such a palate cleanse, and then again, I think the Phantom Express is just easy with multiplayer. Aside from that last phase, like.
Yep.
It is so easy to make it to the end without being hit. It's just that last phase is rough, but you can kind of tank through it if you've done well.
I think that was one of the bosses I had the most fun with.
Yeah, definitely was a good one. And then the last two, like, you just can't move them. Like, they're just good early bosses. And co-op does not really change them at all either.
No, I don't think so.
Are you solid on this? Are we set?
I mean, the only things that those two first hard bosses were harder for me than they were for you, but like it makes sense where they are.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things where we have to compromise too, like being two different people with two different experiences levels, but also being the people who played it together. Yeah. Like we have to like think like, okay, from a co-op standpoint, this was hard for me because, and then think of the other person like, but this was hard for them because, and figure it out in the middle. Yeah. You got so much better though. You know what I mean? The fact that like, you took down Cala Maria, even if we got there together, like you still took her down. So
yeah,
I don't think you had as hard of a time with her as you did with them. And I bet like if you had to replay the game in order, if we had continued playing and repeated the same bosses, you would find it much easier.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, I think we did it. Yeah, this is good. So, we would love to hear your thoughts on our co-op tier list. Please keep in mind, we are trying to focus as much of this conversation on how we were able to handle these bosses in the co-op experience. Obviously, some of it's just going to rub into their overall difficulty in general, but we want to hear your thoughts, so leave comments, make them constructive, not hateful.
True.
Check out our stream on this too. We had like 4 episodes where we did this and we had a great time.
It was great.
And yeah, let us know your experiences. Even if you come from the solo experience, like I'd love to hear how you felt while you were playing this and like what you guys thought was hard or easy. Just share your thoughts.
Yeah.
And Soup, thank you for being here.
I'll always be here.
Always. I know you're a Pat or a Brian, but you're really a Patrick, and it's a Patrick thing.
Exactly.
So
it is a Patrick thing.
Got to keep it in the family. Aside from that, keep on the lookout for future content. We will be doing more tier lists in the future, as well as like other discussion content. So be on the lookout for that. And we want to thank you for listening. Now go out there and get gaming.